and good afternoon and good evening. We do have good evening because we have Krishan, who is in Kuala Lumpur, and it's the end of the evening. Thank you, all of you, for arriving at this beautiful hour of the day, wherever it is for you. And we have some wonderful new entries here. So welcome to Lisa Ma, who hasn't been before, and John Agay, is that right, John?
Jay.
I hope. Ajay, and Sonia. The rest of you have been before. Oh, Elizabeth, you haven't been before. Thank you. What I'll do is I want to share a few slides and a few thoughts, and then we'll have our magical conversation. And thank you, Martin, for coming. You're from North Carolina, that's right. So we have a few different states in America and different countries in the world, which is always the joy with this. And essentially, it's about real synergy. And how do we create real synergy in the world? And what have we've been exploring and discovering over the last nearly 10 months since we started. Let me show you some slides. I really want us to think about, to relax, to get into a mindset about who we are as human beings. We are all human beings. We are also wonderful, gender dynamic, intelligent archetypes. And this is something, for those of you who don't know anything about that, I want to introduce the ideas. But I do have in my team here, my research team. These are wonderful, wise men and women who've been here right from the start. And some of them are here. You'll see Dawn there, who's named Mama Yawa on the screen because she's a wonderful queen mother of an area in Africa. And she's a wonderful sovereign. You're going to get to know some of these archetypes. Philip, who's there with us, he's a wonderful ruler. Curtis, who's here, so Philip's coming from England, so has Mama Yawa. Curtis is here from Canada, he's a beautiful philosopher. Adolfo, I'm not quite sure if Adolfo's here yet, he's a philosopher and a bit of a ruler, a bit of a mixture. Tammy's here, who's beautiful sovereign, she's here in Las Vegas with me. And Angela, who's a magician and a sovereign. We're developing our ideas on our archetypes. And Alison, I'm not sure is here. Both of you are from California. Alison is a magician and I'm a magician. So for those of you who don't know what the hell that means in terms of archetypes, and this is the time to find out. But the main thrust of what we do in terms of developing real synergy is also to understand value creation and, dare I say, love. Love being a driver for expansion and expansion flowing into synergy. And synergy is all parts of every situation coming together in a positive, valuable way. And this is our mission, that by identifying each one of us, the me in each one of us, we understand our relationships, which are me and you, and that we understand the we. So our goal is to create a new narrative, makes everything work better. And what I mean by that is, today I want to focus on business, but it is about life. It's about our nations. It's about our world. So the we is the world, but the me is you. And the you and me is what I might call real relationships, real relationships. What does that mean? What does that mean in order to create good business? We have identified magical conversations and the idea of a lighthouse. So I wanted to share this here for those of you who have not been here before. Magical conversation is one without judgment, without arguments, without anger, and without coercion. And that's what we're going to do when we get into our breakouts. But in order to understand the lighthouse, you need to understand your impact in every single situation. What is your perception that you bring in? How do you feel when you're looking at the new world that's come to us now? I just announced a book which I bought, which is called The Day Tomorrow Said No. We know that the pandemic has stopped our world, and now we can begin it again with better conversations. So it's also about our energy levels, our relationships, our communication skills, our respect for each other, and real synergy. And this is just a general picture to get us in the mood, because remember that cycle, the I, the you, the we, the I in the me, not as in egotistical, but in genuine, authentic me. And the idea behind us is that we have this magical conversation without judgment. We live in a very judgmental world at the moment. So let's suspend our judgment, but share our differences. And with an open mind, a willing heart, and authentic truth. Now, at the bottom of the base house is what I would share with you is a gender dynamics intelligence map. And here we have our archetypes. Remember, I introduced them when they were in my team. We had Dawn, who is the sovereign, that green crown. The magician is where I am, the ruler where Philip is, the philosopher where Adolfo and Curtis are. But what does it mean? I want to give you a little journey, because what we're going to talk about today is how do we bring this synergy together in business. So you are each an individual, but I want you to think about what archetype you might be. So when you get into our gatherings, our breakout room, we can be able to focus on those. Generally, the male energy of the world is about task, and the female energy is about relationships. So I put relational and task. Now in business, we're going to find the ruler who is coming from a very masculine energy, and the magician, which also comes from masculine energy, but she is a woman. We will then find that we've got very feminine energy, and we hear a lot of talk about bringing feminine energy in. How can the feminine and the female help the world become a better place? But this is about a very inclusive map. Everybody in the world is somewhere on this map. There is no exclusion. This is about core behavior. It's not about generation yet. It's not about sexuality. It's not about culture. It's not about creed. It's about our core behavior. How can we understand our masculine and feminine energy in all of us? So what we find is that some of you men may be a ruler, some of you may be a philosopher. We'll hear in a minute from Philip and Curtis about what those differences are. In a minute from Dawn and hopefully Alison, if she's there, or maybe Angela and myself about the magician, and Tammy as a sovereign. But what I want you to focus on today is what's the underpinning of this map? Because how do these characters sit together if we look at business? Well, men in general, and this is not my research, this is general knowledge from Barbara Annis and many very fine psychologists who've studied, men tend to be much more direct, much more task focused, whereas women tend to be more indirect, more multiple, more circular. And this is because underpinning the way men behave is a much more boxed, simple, yes, no, either or system. And I want you to think about it like a computer. This is a PC. Whereas if we look at the women work on a much more circular, bit like a Mac. We work in lots and lots of different ways. A classic, we say that women are multitaskers. Well, what I want you to think about is what happens when we go into work situations and when we come at it from different ages. So there are magicians have got a few more boxes in their head, and the philosophers have got a few more circles. And this is an illustrative way of understanding how we're talking to each other. If we're going to create a synergy, a genuine, authentic working together, we need to know ourselves. We need to be able to tune into relationships, and we need to be able to create the narrative together. I just wanted to remind us, and I'm sure you all know, that we're all different generations here. And I'm really delighted to have Elizabeth Hicks with us, who is a Gen Z. I think that's right. Elizabeth, you're there and somewhere in the audience. But I'm not the silent generation. I'm just in the baby boomer generation. And it's very important that we look to each other from different perspectives. So I'd love to have a thought on this as to the relevance of gender dynamics intelligence when we look at it from a Gen Z point of view, that the world may look different when we're in that space. So just pausing now, I want you to think about what kind of archetype you might be and what might be the relevance of that. So let's see who's here on the call. And I want to just ask a very quick insight from 4 of my team, if I can ask. I'd like to ask Philip to give a one-liner on how the ruler sees the world. And Dawn, if you would talk about the sovereign. And Angela, do you want me to refer to the magician, or would you like to?
Either way, it's okay with me.
Okay, Philip, how does the sovereign see the world? Sorry, how does the ruler see the world? How could I make you a sovereign?
You'd make a very nice sovereign.
Oh, thank you, Dawn. How do I see the world? Fairly easy, fairly simple, situationally one or the other, this or that, either this one or that one. Straightforward. Do it like this, don't do it like that. Thank
you, that's wonderful. And if we ask Curtis to give a very short one sentence as a philosopher, that may be different to Philip as a ruler.
Yeah, I'd say the one driving word is curiosity, questioning. It's not as simple and not as cut and dry. I can certainly see cut and dry situations, but I will also do a lot of deep thinking around things.
Excellent, thank you. Mama Yawa, as a sovereign and a queen mother, how do you think it's different?
Multi-dimensional, complex. There are lots of elements, and looking at things from lots of different directions so that we get the full picture, so that we can see the world in total as opposed to in bits.
Okay, and as a magician myself, I see the world with a masculine logic, but a female baseline. So I know that I'm very creative and I love collaborating. I'm not an over nurturer, although I'm definitely a nurturer as a female, but I love to be in my head. I love to be able to get into action, but also I have this baseline of feeling. Now, those of you who are thinking about what archetype you may or may not be, that's okay. It's to think about what the mix comes together and what it might look like from a different age point of view. So I do want to ask Elizabeth to just make a comment on the conversation that she and I had, as I'm coming up to 72 this month, so I'm definitely a baby boomer. And Elizabeth, you would share that you were a Gen Z, and that makes you what age?
Yeah, so I'm 23, identifying with, the Gen Z population, just on the cusp of the
millennial. We've lost you. Hi, Elizabeth.
Oh, you might have bumped off, Dr. Pauline, but usually Zoom picks them back up again real quick.
Yeah. So hopefully she's disappeared, but she'll come back again. I did have a delightful conversation with Elizabeth, and we discussed here she comes again. Hi, Elizabeth.
Sorry about that. I guess we've been having some Wi-Fi problems. But yeah, about Gen Z, I'm just on the cusp of the millennial and Gen Z generation. So it's just kind of interesting see kind of both of those generations. But I think as regards to gender dynamics, generationally, we had a great conversation about that. And I think that, you know, in all generations, people are just really looking to find fulfillment in the workplace.
And that was the main thing we picked up on. There's a different motivation for how business and life comes together. Is that right, Elizabeth?
Right, yeah.
And do you think that the generational views get in the way of real synergy, or is everybody wanting to create something that comes together?
I think that there is something to it, that some generations want different things than other generations, like motivations and whatnot, you know, due to different technologies or different mindsets around, you know, big economic impacts or wars. But I think for the most part, generally, you know, people are people and they just want to be appreciated at the end of the day.
That's good. Excellent. So let me just go back to a share, because one of the things I was thinking about in terms of looking at our breakout, I just wanted to share this slide from our research. So remember thinking about those archetypes. And I think, Elizabeth, in our discussion, we came to the conclusion that you were fairly sovereign. Is that right, Elizabeth?
Yeah, right. That was a really awesome discussion.
And what did it feel like to be a sovereign and be Gen Z?
I think it was I think it was really empowering. And I felt like I was, you know, I felt seen in that moment.
That's a lovely comment. So feeling seen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, men and women come together in synergy. The world of business has been run by men for a long time, and we know that over the last 30 years, and what I've been watching and seeing is that women have come into the fore, women-owned businesses, women in management, women in leadership. And sometimes women are unsure about how they play their roles. And as a magician, and using my logic in my head, because I'm a mathematician, not a linguist, I sometimes wonder why women don't always understand each other. But our goal, and in talking to Elizabeth, I really felt positive and encouraged that the younger generation were keen on fulfillment, that we can fulfill our own roles. So in being a woman, being a magician or a sovereign or a mixture of these things is okay. Being a ruler or a philosopher, being a mixture of the two is okay. The key question today is, how do we create our future? How do we get away from polarized arguments, from blocks, from biases, from stereotypes that block our way? How can we truly be ourselves and answer the Gen Z question, which is, what is the fulfillment? And the pandemic has brought us to this stop. You know, so that book, The Day Tomorrow Said No, there are three characters in the book. There's today, there's tomorrow, and there's the little one. And the little one is yourself, Elizabeth. It's about the energy of youth. So what I would like to do is to just explore a little bit more about the archetypes as you think about who you are, and then we'll go into a breakout room. Now, the assessment is, if you're male, then you're a ruler or a philosopher. So the male, and these are just brief bullet points. The ruler is, as Philip said, you know, much more simple, straightforward bullet points. Tell me, I'm going to, you know, get into action. The philosopher is more curious, it's more thinking, feeling, as Curtis referred to. The magician is the logical female, but she's got lots of ideas, so don't tell her to be soft and sweet. She likes being into action. And the sovereign is this beautiful Mama Yawa, Queen Mother, lovely nurturing that really creates unity in our world. So whichever one you think you are or feel you are, that's the one to be in the conversation. And just focus very quickly on these words, which we got in our research. These are words about women and about men, from men and women. And one of the things to notice is that in the women's words, there's nurturing. That's this beautiful, hormonal, caring, circular energy. And in men, there are words like protector, provider, warrior. Yes, there are other words in there, but I want you to come from this sensitivity. And as we look at a breakout, I would ask Angela to split us into groups of 4. So we've got some intimate conversation. Mixed together, we get whoever we get in the room. Remember, it's no judgment. It's come with your experiences and your perceptions, your perspectives, your energy. And remember to listen with an open heart. And what I want us to explore is how courageous can we be for synergy in the creation of business now? And really very specifically about women being not necessarily in control without men, but being in the leading role in co-leadership with men. As many people talk about the rise of the feminine and how we need feminine energy, but feminine energy can be found in men, and also female energy can be found in women like me, who are, dare I say, masculine on occasion, that looks a bit like a man. So the goal in the breakout, and we'll break out for 15 minutes, if that's all right, Angela, is to really explore in your 4, what is synergy when you put women into the key role, and it could be a co-leadership role with a man or with other women, and what are the ways that we can do that now? If today is the day that tomorrow said no, there's a line in the sand. The past does not exist. What does it look like when we invite women into co-leadership with men? Okay. Are you clear about the question, all of you?
Can you repeat it, Pauline? I'll put it in the chat.
Okay. How courageous can we be for synergy in the creation of business now? Inviting women into co-leadership with men. So it's very specifically about having equity, and remember that the baseline is masculine energy, feminine energy, male, female. Remember the boxes and the circles. So use your imagination and your experience, and let's have some fun coming back with some really courageous ideas, something different. Remember, the day tomorrow said no, we're not going into the past, we're going to the future.
Yes, hello, Richard. Welcome. It's very nice to see you.
Thank you.
Of course, Knut, we've met before, and Tammy and I are old friends now. So, and Angela and I are old friends. So it's great to see you. Well, we're going to talk about, or at least think through the question that Pauline's put to us, and we have to be courageous and adventurous and all of those things, which is quite difficult, I'm sure, for some of you at 7 in the morning and others late at night. But if I just run through very quickly from a sovereign's point of view and how we create synergy in the workplace, in business, and how we can be creative. One of the big things for me as a sovereign, and I lead a very complicated life. It's no more complicated than anybody else's, but there's lots of things in it. So I have lots of distractions, and I can distract the boardroom with lots of different ideas that come in. But sometimes those ideas can kind of springboard other things. And I think that's what the sovereign brings. We can be quite challenging and we can springboard ideas. The trick is to get people to listen to us, of course. And we've had these conversations quite a lot. So what does everybody else think? Any thoughts? And who's going to report back?
But, you know, I believe, you know, that when we talk about this modern future workplace, and that is very different from the old one as I see it, and you know, I feel maybe more as a mix of philosopher and ruler. It depends on the situation, the context. And maybe that is the flexibility we need now in a new workplace. So in order to invite both men and women into real co-creation, and co-creation is this buzzword these ways. But as I say, you know, before we are creators, we cannot be co-creators. And maybe that is a part of it, that we start with our individual unique skills and competence whatsoever, if we are men or women, what kind of archetypes we prefer and so on. So it is somehow, I call it a collective individualist, that we so to say, we look at ourselves, whatsoever perspective or background we have, more from a complex perspective, and we do understand complexity. That's a part of the future as well, to understand complexity. So when we are into a group, a small team, teams with men and women whatsoever, I think that to listen into the complexity and tune in, because what you mentioned, you know, now, that is that I also can listen to women, and then I get confused because I'm not really sure what is this about, what is the topic, you know. But at the same time, when I listen into the energy behind, because it was mentioned, Paulinos mentioned, you know, that this, I learned that very early because I really had to struggle with that, you know, what is love? And then I understood that to be allowed is to be seen and understood. You know, and if we see each other, and I mean at this deeper, profound level, we see each other whatsoever. I mean, whatsoever you talk about, whatsoever you express, then we start just to play with the energies, dancing with each other. And it's not so much about men and women. I have been with men and women, and they are just totally different, even if they call themselves philosophers or rulers or sovereigns or magicians, you know. So maybe we can be too focused on the archetypes. That is my now, because for me it's not about synergy. It's about the synthesis. It's about the energies playing with each other in a way that we, so to say, we forget that we are men and women.
Yeah. Richard, have you some thoughts on that?
I like what you said, Knut, synthesis, not synergy. Yeah.
What do you like about that, Richard? This is not synergy.
That it's a coming together. Synthesis being 1 and 1 equals 3, not 1 and 1 equals 2. So each can draw out from the other, perhaps more than otherwise would be the case. And maybe to illustrate that point, one of the thoughts I had just now was, and this might seem a little bit radical, I don't know, but involve children at appropriate points in the development, evolution, activity of a business. And what brings me to that thought is, or when I say that, I also think of climate change and Greta Thunberg and so forth, Fridays for the Future. I think young people have some absolutely fantastic ideas for the future, and if we're thinking about building business now for the future, serving future generations, surely we need to think about those future generations as being the customer base. Another thought I had was, wouldn't it be great if all business became really, fully, truly customer-centered, customer-focused, customer-based, provided, so there was real dialogue and exchange between the customer and provider, supply and demand. Those are some thoughts.
That's fantastic.
And I also In thinking about this meeting, I also remembered working for probably 5 years of my corporate life under the direction of a female CEO, and it just made me think, how did I feel about that? And
how did you feel?
How did I feel about that? A great question. She was very good at her job. And at the time, when I wasn't perhaps as aware or conscious as I am now, I felt slightly ill at ease about it.
Can you trace that?
Because it was abnormal for a female to be in charge of such a large research organization, in my experience at that time. I feel absolutely fine about it now, and it's interesting that what happened in that organization as a result of her being, or what, not as a result of, but whilst she was in charge. And I don't really think it makes very much difference.
Right. That's very interesting, because I'm aware that we're running out of time and I need Tammy to say something. But I was also a CEO within an organ, because our organization was, as you say, I was a dean of faculty. So we're 200 staff. So it's interesting to see how you thought about being the boss, being a woman. It's challenging, I know. Tammy.
From the sovereign's perspective, the so-called soft skills that we bring to the table, they're fear. It takes fierce beliefs in knowing who you are and being able to excavate the feelings and beliefs of other people, to honor and not judge them. And when we're talking about businesses being for customers, absolutely for customers, but also what are the consequences of every product and service that they provide, not only for people, but for a planet. This is something I've brought up before, and where corporate social responsibility is finally gaining more and more traction, and people are demanding it, especially Generation Z. And I am so happy for that, as it has been one of the founding principles of my business that I founded in 2002, is getting companies involved in the community. And again, the soft skills are, it's the and. You know, every point of view has a purpose, and it's based in beliefs. And to be able to listen to beliefs and understand them, it's seen, heard, and understood. And that's the power that sovereigns can bring. And yes, it is. It's a synthesis of the ideas, because there's not one right answer from one person. It's literally a mind meld. And that's where the and comes in. Yes, we have to get to as Philip would say, we have to get to the answer. Let's get this done. But it's not that simple. It's easy, but it's not simple. And that's where all the perspectives and the stories and the ands come in. And once we can see the big picture, then we can figure it out.
Yeah. Yes, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
On that one. Well, I would be, wouldn't I? So.
Can I just mention a business model that I came across called Holocracy? I don't know whether any of you have come across that.
Yes.
That's not surprising. I think that's possibly the best business model I've ever come across in my entire career.
I agree. And you know, I also think, you know, that what is extremely important now is just to get away, so to say, from the old leadership expectations, because
yes,
very often it's both women and men, they operate the masculine perspective. That is a fact. So I have also seen a lot of people now with, and especially men, sorry, they are rulers and they take over because they want to have results immediately and say, but we are living in a very complex world. So if we don't listen into the complexity, then we will never come up with new patterns and solutions and answers. And that is how we can invite each other. That is to understand that we have different perspectives. And in a business, we talk about purpose-driven business as a driving force in future community building. And I think that is community building. And that is all business should be about that. And then we build teams and communities as men and women in that holistic perspective.
That's great, yes.
The consequences of decision and action.
Yeah. Angela, you haven't said anything yet.
This is exactly what we want, which is we have seen this before in these meetings. We all want the same thing, and Pauline says it all the time. We all want the same thing. So how we get there in a courageous way, in a new way, and evolutionary way is the question. So for one thing that I'm taking out of this is that it goes beyond the archetypes, right? It's not about archetypes, is not even about men and women. It's about creating this community, to use your words, together. Is the how is always the challenge.
It's about patience and purpose, aligned with purpose.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. We could continue talking, I'm sure.
For sure.
I think one of the big ideas, because we're going to stop now, one of the big ideas was from you, Richard, for me, in bringing children into it. Because I watch my granddaughter and she leads the way and she teaches me and she creates and she's fantastic. And I think we need to learn from kids. We really need to involve them in what we're doing.
They might not,
thank you.
but they see.
Thank you,
they understand more than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
Just press the record. Good. And Nancy, where are you?
I'm in Western Massachusetts.
Okay, and Krishan is in Kuala Lumpur.
Yes.
So guys, what do you think? What archetypes do you think you are for a start? John, are you a ruler or a philosopher? Or do you feel a bit of both?
I think I'm more of a philosopher. Just, knowing being a man, I know I'm willing to die for what I believe in, but I'm also I'm curious to more sensitive to what like the injustice in the world and and things like that. And so I'm always curious to find out, how do you solve some of these issues? And so I think I'm more of a philosopher.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Krishan, what do you think? Do you think you're a magician or a sovereign?
Okay. Before you came up with that little mini summary, showed the mini summary on the 4 archetypes, you had the diagram earlier with the yin and the yang and all that stuff.
Yes.
My guess was I'm a magician. And when I read the little summary, true enough, I am a magician.
Oh, fantastic. And Nancy, how did you feel? What did you feel you were?
Yeah, I also gravitated toward being a magician.
Okay, so potentially we may have 3 magicians here and a philosopher. So this is good. How did you feel about the word synergy? How do we bring the philosopher and the magician energy together and embrace the ruler and the sovereign?
Well, I think that we are we all need each other, right? I think no one is better than the other, and it's just more of you're more someone gravitate towards more on this side, and someone gravitate towards more on that side, and so I think that when you combine, it becomes more of a force, and so I think that we need each other.
I love that. And I think I love the word force as well, because we tend to think of force as bad, but actually force is also really for good, isn't it? It's I love the word synergy because it has energy in it. But Nancy, we haven't met before. So tell me, what do you think about coming together? How can women and men lead together, which makes it very different from the past?
I currently am in this situation because when I first started in a current role, I moved from a female lead to a male lead. And I think like what you're saying too, like the whole synergy and energy and needing each other. But I also think that when you come together, and especially when you initially come together, you need to have an understanding of who you are and who they are. And if you can come with a level playing ground and introduce yourself and understand where you're coming from and what's your history and what is your strength and how can you best communicate with each other to create that synergy? Because if you come from not knowing who you are and not knowing who they are, then you butt heads like, oh, he's being mean to me, or he doesn't understand me, or he's shouting at me, and he's not shouting at me. He's just who he is. And I needed to we need to create synergy. We need to come together at a level playing field to build and grow and rise together with that strength.
Yes, and I wonder, why does it go wrong at the moment? Why is it not automatic that women are leading companies en masse? Because the numbers are still not there. Why?
Well, and that was a question to me, but I think that women don't come forward with who they are in the beginning. I think they hold back and try to learn and understand and listen more and kind of take the back seat to feel the ground before they show who they are. I think that's what
Okay, so what could we do different in the future? What could be a sort of a practice in a way that businesses do in order that doesn't happen? Because I agree, I think there's a lot of research as well that women, we are more cautious in many ways. We go, I don't know whether I can do that. Now, whether that's because we've always been battling against the male world, but how do we literally open the doors to that? How do we get the art of intuition, for instance, accepted as a major force in business rather than logic? What do you think, John, when you come across men who are not like you, who are more dominant rulers?
I think there needs to be an environment or create an environment where we're not making assumptions, because if you make assumptions, you've already made the decision that this is how it's going to go, right? And so just have the environment to really allow people to learn about who this person is without already thinking that, well, you're a female, so this is what you're going to be doing, or you're male, so this is what normally you would do, or and that. And so I think having the environment or creating that space to allow for people to allowing the space or creating the environment to be open-minded to learn about people.
Yes, I agree. Krishan, what do you think? How do we become courageous and make sure this happens without getting into a fight?
Ideally there should be an environment that encourages not so much about male female way of functioning and perspective, but an environment that encourages open discourse and so the way I'm thinking of it is more along the lines of what are our talents, what are our perspective, our gifts, rather than male female dynamics per se. So go based on merit, go have an open mind, encourage that healthy debate and discussion, and you can leverage on each other's strengths, so it minimizes, if at all, or neutralizes the weaknesses. So when you work or collaborate with each other, then you looking at the richness that each other brings.
Yes.
So a level playing field in that way.
I agree. So how could we actually, let's be really practical about this. We know that it's not like that at the moment. What fundamentally might we change in business on a practical level that would change? I'll give you an example. I've often said this. Every table in a boardroom should be round.
Right.
So, you know, we've all
that would be fun, because a circle is like it doesn't have it represents a beginning and an end, right? And
yes.
It's sort of systematic.
Yes.
And
it's
well, that's loose. I was going to ask you, because you know, we know that there's things like, oh, there's systemic racism, there's systemic bad. How do we change the system then? How do we, like, having a round table and like making sure, like in Malaysia, I lived in Malaysia for 4 years, every meeting there's food.
Yes, food is a big thing in Malaysia.
And it's really interesting because, you know, there's a boardroom table, and beside your business there's a plate with some food on. Now, I know in England we don't do that, and I don't see it in America, but it actually makes it a very different environment, because suddenly you're presented with something social.
Correct. It's a more friendly environment. It's not so much a very serious, overly rigid or structured environment. But then again, it depends on the organization or what is the purpose of the meeting. But yeah, food sort of breaks the ice.
Yes.
So you'll have your little coffee break or tea break in between, and you've got your lunch to diffuse whatever was the discussion before, if it was necessary to take a step back from it.
Yes. So what? And let's be very. So we've got the round table. We've got light. We're encouraging this environment to be different, the space to be different. What else could we put in? That's adventurous.
Perhaps it whoever is chairing the meeting or whoever's leading this how shall I say, paradigm shift or whatever, they have to very clearly lay out what is it that they're expecting, because it's something totally different, and different normally means it's going to take some time for people to get an understanding and to, shall I say, identify with it and maybe get invested with it. Yes. So there's going to be a bit of a steep learning curve. So patience and an open mind and someone who is skilled enough to navigate it in a very diplomatic and tactful way.
Yes. Any other brave ideas, Nancy and John? Think outside of the box, like the round table.
I was trying to think, like, because in nonprofit, right? So we have a meeting, or we have meeting with volunteers, and there's always an icebreaker, right? So and like you were saying with the having the food, it kind of breaks the ice. But there, somehow, in some way, to be comfortable and to feel like you bring something to the table, to be asked the question, who are you? And whether it's some fun, cute question, or whether it's a professional, like, what's your biggest strength, or what's your, you know what I mean? Like that kind of, some kind of environment where you're asking the question of the people around the room, so everybody feels they have value and something to bring.
How about if having fun, and you have to be careful with that concept in business, but that having fun was always a part of business? Because I always think things like asking people what their favorite song is, you know, doing something which, like the food on the table, breaks away from what we've had before. What do you think, John?
Yes, I think that will work because it's almost like you need to have something that's going to break that already, whatever's already in the subconscious about what female and male does. And so whether it's the music, because music is not, or is not going to be based on male, female. And so right then and that, yes.
So one of the things, and we've only got a couple of minutes, but when we identify our strengths as these 4 archetypes, we use the strengths. So the bullet point man, the thinking man, the creative magician, the caring sovereign. Very simply, when we come together, we mix a cake, which is pleasure, but we need to allow, and one of the keys I've got from you all is the environment. If we change the environment, we change the energy of how we deal with the serious business. By allowing life. And I would feel that it's about life at work, especially now we can work from home. And so we've got this mixture of environments. But to make it really acceptable in the business world, we need to all believe it. So when the man who says, yeah, but it's about profit, you say, but it's about feelings, it's about energy, it's about synergy, it's about flow. And that the conversation will shift the energy of the environment. So are we willing to do it? Because it's really down to us to make sure that men and women are equal in status, but we're not the same. That's my passion, is because we bring different energy to it. And the philosopher and the magician have a really big role in making this shift, because we need to demand those differences. When I ran programs in Malaysia, and that was different because it wasn't just working, but we had music in between every session and we danced. Okay, thank you. You got some
Thank
ideas?
you.
I love that idea of dancing in between sessions.
Yeah, that's an awesome idea.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Very good. Hi, Elizabeth, Caroline, and Josh.
Hello. Hello.
So, let me just look at this.
I do have to hop off in just a couple of minutes, unfortunately.
That's a shame. Do you want to share something that might be going on in your head now then, so we capture something from you?
Sure. I think, as far as courageousness in leadership with men and women, I think women are doing a lot to step out right now. And I think understanding a lot about the different archetypes, like the sovereign and the philosopher, and how they can work together, and the different strengths and weaknesses, is like very important. Because you can't ask like a sovereign, for example, to do something that a magician would be way better at. And I think that is really critical to understanding the corporate environment.
So essentially something maybe we ought to be doing anyway, which is to play to people's strengths, but also to stretch people so that you're not pigeonholed in the things you do really well and only get those things. Otherwise,
absolutely,
there's little development room for you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Any thoughts from anyone else?
I mean, I've done some leadership stuff, and I've worked in manufacturing, like with operators, bringing people from the bottom up to the top, giving them chances to lead, even with like shift leads, giving the other people that aren't shift leads the chance to lead meetings and things like that. So just giving anybody the opportunity to lead and let people try things, as long as it's not going to cause irreparable harm to people, property, or anything else. You know, it's okay to make mistakes, and you can clean some things up later if it doesn't go exactly to plan. So just allowing some of those things to happen. And when you do that, when you open yourself up to those things, some really amazing stuff can come out of that. So not just being worried about what could go wrong, but being okay with something not going exactly to plan just allows some really magical stuff to happen.
Thanks, Josh.
I guess along with that, you know, try not to be critical or criticizing people for their ideas, and just you know, be open to listening.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. You know, coming with an open mind, because
Yeah.
everyone has different experiences. That's super important.
Right. And then like letting people finish, because the other person is going to be coming from somewhere so different from the way that we normally think. We've got to let them get their whole idea out so that we can understand it before we start questioning or picking it apart.
I must learn shorthand. Any other input? So let me have a look. I've lost the question in chat. It didn't come through. How can we be courageous in leadership? Synergy when women are in a key role. I just think it's time to stop having processes that make it hard for women to be in positions of influence. And so that can be as a leader, or it could be someone much further down in an organization, but it's about the opportunity to influence. And certainly my working career has seen many women lose opportunities through either a reduction in their own confidence. They have given themselves a rating of their confidence level, which suggests that they would not be able to do the job. And as an aside, men will apply for a job if they think they could do about 50% of it, and women won't apply unless they think they can do about 80% of it. So in my experience, women, they don't lack the confidence to do the job, they lack the confidence in themselves in order to carry out the job. And as someone who's task focused first and people focused afterwards, generally as a ruler, I've learned to turn that round and to deal with it differently. But generally in the archetype, I'd be looking for people who can perform a task. And often, if people don't get exposed to the opportunity to do things differently, to go along your route, Josh, then often they can't come to a task with the opportunity to do it, because they'll tell themselves, well, they haven't done it before, so they don't have the experience, so they'll focus on what could go wrong. So part of the what can we do to be courageous for me would be to step outside of the box of expectation and start looking to the box that ticks the influence. What is it that people can bring, rather than what task can they perform? And that's a very different way of looking at things. And that for me is a very different way of looking at synergy, because synergy would look to influence rather than task for me, even as a ruler who's task focused.
I think that's a really great reflection. You know, there's a lot of people who don't recognize that some people, their brain just operates more with their heart first rather than like logic, like emotionally. And then there's some people that are just the other way around, that it's more logic first and then emotionally. And I think it's important that we start recognizing that it's not even just women, but also men, and working to bring that out in people and make it like a norm thing in the corporate world.
That reflects straight back into the archetypes, Elizabeth. So that's great, because if you understand your archetype, you'll know that the way in which they can operate is led emotionally or logically. So the logic would be more the masculine energy, and the heart would be the more feminine energy. So we talk about mind flow as being a way in which you start from a mindset or a state of mind and then get into the flow of the situation. So you get into mind flow. So you would be able to see the logic of something having come to it through your emotion or your heart first. You would go through that process, and your start point would depend on your archetype.
I think the like magician or ruler types, since we're more leadership prone, we can use that strength to maybe like ask leading questions or make leading statements about the sovereign or the philosopher, to bring them into the conversation. So like today, we could do that and kind of build their confidence in the moment to get them to take over the conversation next, and then be able to have things to say. You've just built up their confidence. They can build off of that, and that would allow them to kind of take over and run with it right away, rather than putting them on the spot to initiate everything themselves. The more people
I like what you said
practice
about
with that. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Well, I like what you said about that, but you know, recognizing or enabling males to say, like, you have all these leadership qualities, and how are you using them, for a greater purpose? I think that's really great.
Yeah, and I think Philip used the word, enabling, just leading the conversation in a way that enables the philosopher, sovereign types, or even the magician. I mean, to take part in the conversation more often with more confidence, and it just kind of opens the door a little bit wider for people who want to walk through.
Caroline, is there anything you'd like to add at this point?
Yes, sorry, I know that I've been a bit quiet. The brain is not firing on all cylinders quite today. I'm aware of that.
Perfect.
But it's interesting listening. Yes, I think there's something around courage on all sides. And to be really courageous, there needs to be a vulnerability. And that's when I think the magic can happen. But I think it's quite difficult. It was very interesting listening to Josh talking about some of his experiences. One of my questions that came up for me as I was listening to you, Josh, was if you had been in a different corporate environment, would you have been able to do the same thing? Or was it because the corporate environment had a certain type of environment that allowed you to be able to do that?
I've been in very restrictive environments. So I've had to do that when my leader, who's been historically not very open-minded, isn't around to shut things down. So a lot of those moments take place, you know, in the hallway, out in the field, in team meetings, you know, and so it's, for me, it's been a lot more one-on-one in small groups, and building that trust and that group dynamic over time, because I can only do it with a few people, and then those people start to talk and share their experiences, and so then the larger group starts to come together over time.
And I think that's where the downside of courageousness comes in, because if you're not quite within that, you can be cut off the knees, and it can have quite a devastating effect. And then you're back into some old paradigms. You know, one of the paradigms for women is, and I got taught very early on by my mother, saying, you go out and then you do whatever you want in the world. But just remember, if you're going to be given the chance, you have to be at least twice as better than all the men.
Yeah.
And then she went on to say, actually, you've got to be twice as better as the best man.
No pressure.
No pressure. No pressure. But yes, that becomes very difficult when, you know, on one hand, if you see yourself, and I've been in a meeting where I've heard some really weird and things come out of people's mouths, and you kind of go, no, it's not going to work. Well, okay, and you say that and you just let it pass and it's fine or whatever. But my goodness, if I had said that, I would have had the whole thing crashing down on me really pretty quickly. So yes, it's for me, it's about how do you create the environments within business to allow something else to flourish.
Just a quick one in there for you, Caroline. I worked in local government, which you may well know is not renowned for creativity or creative approaches, and took the totally opposite view, which backs what Josh did around how I manage my staff. And we always worked on the everyone's got a voice principle, and that worked really well. When I talked to my boss, no.
Hello, everybody. So, is everybody back? Excellent. Well, we had great fun in our breakout group. So, if I may, I'm going to report back first because I can remember what happened. Are we okay? Everybody hear me? So I had John and Krishan and Nancy in my group. And the key thing that came up that we felt was we need to change the environment, the physical environment. So in order for us to have synergy in the future workplace now, it's very important to have a different environment. John came up with us, you know, we need to have, it needs to be a space of open-mindedness. And how do we do that? So we decided that we would use an illustration from Malaysia, where Krishan is, and I lived in Malaysia for 4 years. Every meeting you go into, every meeting I went into, and these were quite serious business meetings, there's always food on the table. And I don't mean like on a buffet table at the side. There's actually some food by your business place. So you'll be allocated around a boardroom table, and there'll be paper, pen, and a plate with food on. Now this changed the energy for me of the meeting. Even if I didn't like what the food was, I just thought, oh, that's different. So we were talking about how do we get to understand our human differences in the environment. So things like always having a round table instead of square tables, making sure that the environment was circular, was open, was light. And we even mentioned my favorite aspect, which was to bring music in and, dare I say, dancing. Now that might not be straightforward in every meeting, but it's something to think about, is to have, and what we said as well, we wanted to really understand each other at a human level. So as well as understanding our archetypes, it was understanding what we brought to the party in terms of even something like what was our favorite song, or what was something that identified ourselves as human beings, as well as knowing what our strengths were. Is that right? Did I report right from my group?
Yes, that's it.
And really being courageous and saying it's okay to even have a song at the beginning of a meeting. Why not? You know, it's about breaking the assumptions of the past so that you actually can put intuition and fun and love at the top of the agenda. And Tammy says here, dancing shakes off the differences and unites us in rhythm. Okay.
Yeah, I think, Pauline, it was more about setting a very relaxed, open tone so that everyone feels comfortable about sharing.
Absolutely. And things like something like food or, I don't know, just something different in the room, the round table,
Nancy was talking about icebreaker.
Yeah, so doing an icebreaker, which is a classic business thing, but making it a regular event every single time. Okay, that's us done. Where's the next group? Which, Angela, well, I was room 1, so room 2?
Room 2 was Curtis and Lisa and Martin.
I can jump in and share.
Lisa, yes.
Yeah, so thank you for having this, by the way, Pauline. This is amazing. Yeah, I think in our group, we were talking a little about consciousness leadership and how, like Marty, for instance, was talking about how he's been consciously creating teams that has a balance of men and women. And so it's really about creating those opportunities where there's balance between the feminine and masculine energy. So, and also it's really not about even about gender, right? It's really about masculinity and femininity, because like a leader like Marty, right? He has both the feminine and masculine energy, and consciously thinking that, hey, you know what? I want to have 50 women in the organization on teams. And I think if we get to the root cause of this in corporations and businesses, and really have people understand that when they create teams, to consciously have this effort, and also consciously know the makeup of each team. So even if you're a female or a male, right, you can embody all these dimensions that was mentioned, right? So let's say you're a woman, right? You can be a musician, right? You could be a philosopher, you could be a ruler, you know, so you can be all of those things, but what if your team is a balance of all of them, right? That's a powerful team. So anyway, so and Marty and Curtis, feel free to jump in if I missed anything. Those were some of
the key was balance. Sounds like making sure there's a conscious balance.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, let's have another group. What was that? There was 4 groups, is that right?
Yep. Shall I go?
Yes, Dawn.
I think we were group 4, but we had a really good discussion. These slots are really too short because I think we could have gone on for ages, but I'll just headline.
Yes.
some of the things. I think the big thing that came out of our group was this inviting men and women to co-create and to really focus on collective individualism. So there is that bridging all of those issues and collectively arriving at answers to things, and really getting to grips and need to really understand the complexities. There isn't just one right answer. There are multiple answers to anything, any question really, depending on the focus. And if we focus purely on developing the business for the future, I think Richard was quite right, and I certainly applaud this. We need to bring the next generation in, bring in the children. They are the future. Why can't we have kids in the boardroom leading the way? That's our radical idea here. Let's have some, young people who are going to say, that's ridiculous. Why would we do it like that? Or brilliant. And they come up with brilliant ideas and challenge our thinking. And
Yes.
I think that is a way of actually getting away from this old-fashioned notion of leadership, these old-fashioned ideas about how we should go about running organizations. And just on a personal note, I put this question to some girlfriends of mine, and one just on Saturday night, and one said, "Oh, I can bring in beer and Chris. This is the snack idea." And the other girlfriend, who's very much more magician, says, "But the men won't listen to you. They'll think it's nice that you've brought in stuff." It's about trying to transcend the understanding and really trying to get to grips with those soft skills, being fierce about the soft skills that sovereigns can bring, and really getting to grips with the feelings and focusing on the customer, genuinely focusing on what the customer needs, what the customer wants, and involving and inviting customers much more than we do currently, and really beginning to understand the consequences of every product we make. There was a comment from Richard about holocracy. Have we heard of that? We need to think about different models and going beyond the archetypes and thinking about much bigger issues. So my group, is there anything else that I've missed? Tammy, Richard?
That's wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
That's wonderful. Where's the fourth group then? Because there were 4 groups, aren't there? Yeah, Philip.
Yeah, hi. So we had a really good discussion that went all over the place, of course. But the issues that I've written down, so please group, jump in if I miss anything you think I should have mentioned. We talked about having an awareness of the archetypes as a start point so that we understand how each of us are and where we come from. And that tuned into how people think with their heart or with their logic, which flowed then into mind flow and how the feminine and masculine energy adapt to the situation. We talked about playing to strengths, people's strengths, but also with development opportunities so that people don't feel trapped by the particular skill or the amount of expertise they have and to only be put in that one position. And we had an example where people in the organization who were quite low in ranking were given positions of leadership and asked to lead groups to see how that might adapt and change the way that other people in the group felt about decisions that were being made. And in addition to that, then expecting other people to honor the fact that this individual didn't really have the experience or the expertise to run a group or a project. So they would need to sit back and think about how that would work rather than to criticize or to attempt to undermine or demean this person who's trying to do something. And then on the back of that would be the notion of permitted failure. So failure only in terms of either or, because I'm a magician. I'm a ruler. Or maybe I'm a magician today, who knows? But in terms of giving people the opportunity to attempt rather than focusing on what they're doing wrong and how it isn't working.
Yeah.
And another comment we got, which I really liked, was about the magic happens when vulnerability expresses itself out of courage.
Oh, I like that. That's a lovely statement.
That came from Caroline. Let's honor the person who shared that.
Thank you, Karen. Could you just say it again?
Yeah, so magic happens when vulnerability expresses itself from being courageous.
That's amazing. That's a lot to think about. Magic happens when vulnerability expresses itself
from being courageous. It's in a way, it rang for me in terms of accepting that a weakness is actually your strength.
Yeah.
Because we talk about strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, threats back in the good old days. Dawn, wherever are you, Mama Yawa, when we're talking about the old ways of doing it, SWOT analysis looked at your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. And
Yes.
for me, a weakness is a strength because it identifies a point at which change can occur faster.
Yes.
Because if you're strong in your strength, then change is likely to take longer. If you're being assisted in your weakness, and these are just the titles of words, I don't like them particularly, but if you're assisted in your weakness, that's where your opportunity to grow comes around much faster.
Yes, I love that.
Enough of the ruler, because I was going to be short, sharp, to the point, and either or. It just shows how things have developed into my magician, huh?
Yes.
Way to get your sovereign on, Philip. Way to get your sovereign on.
Ah, hey, as long as the crown on my head, Curtis, I'm happy.
Oh, that's fabulous. Sadly, I think we've lost Elizabeth. I think maybe her internet dropped out again. But yes, I know, Angela, you need to drop it off. So we're back. Oh, thank you for being here, Angela. So if you have to leave, then that's fine. But I think I love what everybody has said. I think we're building now a real energy around how we use everything on the map. So we use every archetype. We also use either or and. We use task and relational. We have the yin and the yang. And I think one of the things John was saying in our group is, the first thing is to really understand ourselves. And the second is to understand others. So remember, the value cycle is very much here is once we understand ourselves, not just as an archetype, but as everything about us, our experience. One of the things we say, it's about our knowledge, our experience, and our imagination coming together. I.e., everything you know about yourself, every experience you've ever had is what we're sharing now. One of the things I think is going to be really important as we go into the future is how we clarify this as equal priorities. So, people are writing about people and profit being equal priorities, but how do we really make sure that everything is equal priorities? Women, men, co-leading, creation, balance, awareness. It's about listening. We are the forward runners of this. One of the things that we've been looking at over the last 9 months is all the statements that have been said at all the months is we're bringing together into a research document. And I think what I feel today is we've really shared that we desire this energy. We need to go out and make the changes that we want in the world. I change the boardroom tables, change the environment, put in these things, get us talking about the value and the power of intuition over the value and power of logic. John actually said that, you know, together we become a force, and force is good, and we want to overcome the stuck conversations. I know that's something that we're all passionate about. Well, I want to thank you all for being here, and I'm going to really look with my team. We're meeting again next Monday, our small team, and really looking at how we can invite all of you to send this out. This is another reason we want to use the hub network so that it becomes more efficient in terms of the digital side of things, which is not my favorite area, but I can rely on Lisa to be able to help us with that. And all of you to help us send the messages out to where we need to be.